In 1965, Yeadon Airport burnt to the ground. The terminal building caught fire and burnt completely to the ground, nothing left. Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Rider Ramblings. It's a bit grey today. I thought we would today discuss some of the events that happened while I was travelling backwards and forwards, flying backwards and forwards to the Far East and so on. But before I do so, just a bit of housekeeping to do. Last week, I think it was last week, I mentioned that they put in some sleeping policemen on the roads down there and not filled in the potholes. Well, they've now filled in the potholes. It is a bit of a bodge job though, unfortunately. It's definitely not a very good job at all, and I don't expect them to last more than about 3 months. The second thing is we have a government. Well, we have a Prime Minister, and he has nominated a government. There are ministers. This just so happens the Prime Minister was the one that resigned last week, but he was reappointed just before the weekend, and instead of taking 26 days to form a cabinet, it took him about 24 hours, if that. It is different to his last cabinet. There is a motion of censure. No, there are 2 motions of censure in Parliament. I believe they're going to be heard today. But it's thought that he's made sufficient concessions to the various parties that he needs to align to actually beat them, so we will see that. And the third thing is that ex-President Sarkozy is going to jail. I think it's this week. It might actually even be today, which is a bit sad, because it makes France look like a bit of a banana republic when you start jailing your presidents. Or ex-presidents, it does. So it's not a good thing at all. It's understood that he's going to a prison hospital because he still needs his presidential protection. So yeah, while he's in prison. So basically they're going to have police protection officers in prison with him doing shifts, I would imagine. Crazy. Yes. Oh, and yes, the budget, because we are probably going to have a government later on today. We'll know about these motions of censure later on today. They've got until the 31st of December to pass a budget. They're about 10 days late with presenting it, so they're going to have to work hard on this one. And there's a lot of angst in the various different parties, so it might not happen. Right, that's that. Yes! In the late spring, I believe it was, of 1965, there was a fire at Yeadon Airport Terminal, and it burnt to the ground. Quite literally, there was nothing left. About 2 months later, I actually flew out of Yeadon Airport, and this is in the age before health and safety stupidity took over and so on. So there was a small barrier stopping people from going onto the site, and I seem to remember there were a number of lorries there taking away the debris, because when I mean burnt to the ground, when I saw it, there was very little left, actually, just rubble. It looked like one of the bomb sites that we had in the area that hadn't been cleared away from the second big disagreement. Anyhow, they turned the hangar. It was the BKS hangar, I believe it was, and as we were flying BKS, which was the passenger and cargo flight company out of Yeadon Airport, they turned the hangar into a terminal. Now this was very rough and ready, but you have to remember this was in the time when keep calm and carry on and make do and mend were common or always practiced. So there were some wooden desks that they'd managed to get from somewhere, I don't know where, but they were quite old, in sort of round about the centre of the hangar. They'd found some big red scales like you got in the old parcels offices. These things were what, probably about 5 feet high or something like that, with a 3-foot dial, 2.5-foot dial, and a steel plate, and that's what you weighed your luggage on. And standing next to the desk were a couple of porters with their collecting your luggage and putting it onto one of these trolley affairs, one of these sort of 6 feet long-ish, with an axle, single axle in the middle, and then some sort of buffers or bumpers underneath at both ends. I'll see if I can find a picture and put it up if I can, to take us on to put it on the aeroplane. And we were in that hangar. It got better and better over time for 3 years. Yeah, I seem to remember about 3 years. The seating originally was old park benches. Don't know where they'd found them from, but someone was missing some park benches. They did make them better over time. I seem to remember park benches between the check-in desks and, well, check-in desk area and the gate out onto the apron. Yes, over the years, as I say, it got better and better. It took about 3.5 years, I think, in total to build the new airport, clear away the rubble and so on. And we got the proper check-in desks. I think, if I remember rightly, the red scales remained for the whole of the period on there. So that was the first one. About early, I think it was early 1968, the new terminal was nearly ready, but not quite. There was fog, very thick fog, at Yeadon, and it was, how can I put it, really bad actually. And we arrived as usual about 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, something like that. And we were told that, you know, the plane would not take off, the 𝗪𝗪𝗏 would not take off until the fog had cleared. So we sat around, and as I say, this time the chairs, the benches were much nicer. We got a voucher for some coffee at about 10 o'clock. We got another voucher for lunch at lunchtime, by which time it was clear that we were probably not going to make our flight in Heathrow, our connecting flight. So there were computers at this time, so they did actually have computers working with screens and so on. And so we were called to the check-in desk, and they rebooked us, and we were given an option of a direct flight. I think it was Qantas or something like that, a direct flight from Heathrow to Kuala Lumpur Subang, or we could go via Amsterdam, Tashkent in Russia, when it was Russia still, Thailand, change planes in Amsterdam, change planes in Heathrow, change planes in Amsterdam, change planes in Bangkok in Thailand, and then down to Subang in Kuala Lumpur. So that's the one we took. Now you have to remember, I would be what, about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, something like that, at the time. So we chose that one. We arrived in Heathrow, the fog finally cleared, and we arrived in Heathrow, and we had to run across the apron. I mean, you just can't do that these days, but we had to run across the apron while the baggage handlers quite literally sort of ripped our cases out of the back of the Viscount and put them on a powered trolley thing, and took it across the apron. We weren't allowed to use the baggage handler's vehicle. We had to run with a steward or some ground crew or whatever, and we got on to a Trident, I think it was, yeah, for the flight to Amsterdam. We arrived at Schiphol Airport, where we were met by a rather pretty stewardess, and she took us to a hotel in the centre of Amsterdam. The hotel is the one directly opposite the palace in Amsterdam, and we spent the night there before going back to Schiphol and catching the Japanese airline flight, which went to Tashkent and then Bangkok and then gone to Japan, but we weren't doing that leg. So we flew to Tashkent and got off there for a walk around, and the only thing I can really say about Tashkent at the time was it was monochromatic, very monochromatic. It was basically grey, and various shades of grey up to black. Some of the cars were white, some of the vehicles were white, but basically most of the vehicles were black. The sand was sort of a sandy grey colour, and of course the buildings being made out of that were a sort of grey colour, very sort of grey. And there were people selling various trinkets in the transit lounge. Don't know if they were supposed to be there or not, but they were certainly there. So we bought some stickers, I think they were, so prolong in French, and flew on to Bangkok, and we were in the we booked in on our next flight, and we were sitting in the transit lounge, and in walks my father. Yeah, my brother and my father. He'd been in Bangkok on business, and he'd got no idea where we were. I mean, quite literally, you know, basically there was no phones, you know, you had to book phone calls and things like that if you wanted to telephone somebody abroad and things like that in those days. And I didn't have access to telegrams and so on and so forth, so he'd got no idea where we were, and he walked in and he was on the same flight as us down to Kuala Lumpur. So that was number 2. Number 3 was we're in a 747. It would be about 1974, I think, and it was night time, and we were somewhere over. Oh, I've missed one out. Never mind. We were somewhere over the Middle East, and there was this enormous bang, and we were at sort of 42,000 feet or something. And it was, if you've ever been in a car accident, you know the noise that it makes. Well, it was like that. There was this enormous bang, and the aeroplane literally dropped, and there were people floating around in the cabin, quite literally floating around the cabin. Now, we've been flying for so long at this time that we always kept our seatbelts on, so we grabbed our drinks to make sure we didn't spill them, and we're basically laughing at these poor souls floating around in the cabin. And this went on for about 10 seconds or so, the plane leveled out, and some of these people who had been floating around in the cabin ended up with broken bones, unfortunately. I think we had about 3 people with broken bones, and which is a bit sad. Anyhow, it seems that the windscreen had broken in the cockpit, rather a large number of panes, and just one was held, so the captain had taken the plane down very quickly to take the pressure off the last remaining pane of glass, and that was that. So we had to sit in Rome for 10 hours while they flew out a new windscreen and fitted it from London. Anyhow, there's more to come in part 2, so please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.